The summer movie season has come to a close. My kids have returned to school. So it's time to stop and rank all 22 summer 2022 movies that I saw, from the worst to the best. While you're watching, be sure to share your ranking of the summer 2022 movies that you saw down below in the comments. Also, if I missed a movie that you think I'd like, let me know down below in the comments. With that said, this video is brought to you by Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. When I'm not talking movies way too much, I'm actually pretty into fitness. In fact, right here is an exercise bike, and I also watch what I eat very closely. Factor supports wholesome eating made simple. Meal plans offer variety with a rotating weekly meal of 25 plus meal options and Factor Plus add-ons. And that's great for me because I only know how to cook like 4 things, so Factor adds variety into my diet while still sticking to my fitness goals. I've got 3 kids and a YouTube channel keeping me very busy. I don't have time to prep and clean up elaborate meals. Factor meals arrive pre-prepared and ready to eat in a few minutes. A couple months back, I worked with HelloFresh. Factor is now owned by HelloFresh, and with a variety of meal plans, there's something for everyone's tastes and preferences. Head to go.factor75.com/SeanChandler130 and use promo code SeanChandler130 to get $130 off across 6 boxes. If you're interested in a convenient way to have delicious, fresh meals delivered right to your doorstep, head to go.factor75.com/SeanChandler130 and use code SeanChandler130 to get $130 off. And let's get started talking about summer 2022 movies. Coming in last place is Eraser Reborn. This is a direct-to-video action movie, so I don't want to spend too much time dogging on it, but essentially it's a remake of an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle from the mid-90s, a movie that I enjoy, but if I were to recommend an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie to you, Eraser wouldn't be one of the first ones that I would rush to recommend to you. And this is a direct-to-video remake of that film.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
In which case, the source material already wasn't the best, and the thing that makes Eraser stand out is Arnold Schwarzenegger. So you remove him, you remove James Caan as the villain, and all of a sudden, you just kind of have a very generic action movie with a direct-to-video budget. So it's kind of like a bar band covering an okay song. Number 21, Firestarter, an utterly generic adaptation of a Stephen King book that takes some fairly silly material at times and plays it totally straight without any sense of humor. The other thing that's really odd about this film is that it feels like it's a very long, extended first act, and then it basically skips the second act and goes straight to the climax and the finale, in which case it plays very strange, like it's missing a bunch of stuff. So a movie with nothing memorable about it. Number 20, Spiderhead, and this movie was so disappointing to me. It stars Chris Hemsworth and Miles Teller. It's directed by the director of Top Gun Maverick, and it's from the writers of Deadpool. And it's a very generic thriller.
I'm very disappointed.
Where it feels like there's actually kind of an interesting idea in there. It's all about these prisoners who volunteer to be tested on this island with these different medications to see what happens to them. So there's like this setup for an interesting thriller, and then it just kind of plays out very conventional, very straightforward. It's that type of movie that seems like it's supposed to be so much better than it actually is, and then you completely forget about it right after you watch it. Number 19, Senior Year, the Netflix original Rebel Wilson vehicle about a girl who falls into a coma in 2002 and wakes up 20 years later and decides to go back to high school and finish her senior year as a near 40-year-old with the maturity and experiences of a teenager from the early zeros. Now, when this movie came out, a lot of people just crapped all over it, and there's a lot of things about it that are very easy to pick on. It's not great. It's not a movie I'm just going to put on randomly to rewatch it, but I also didn't mind it. I thought there was a little bit more wit to it than I kind of expected in the way that it kind of dealt with the way people deal with each other and how there's a shifting in the way that there's always people looking to be in the spotlight, looking to be popular, looking to be important. A lot of really sloppy editing, a lot of super lazy, crass jokes, but I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of people made it out to be. Next up, Thor, Love and Thunder, and it always breaks my heart when I have to put an MCU film this low on the list because I love the MCU. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, movie franchise of all time, and it's the reason that I get to talk about movies for a living. But not every movie, not every TV show in the MCU works for me, and unfortunately, Thor, Love and Thunder just went too far into the silly, too far into the goofy, too far into the irreverent for me, so much so that it felt like self-parody. Especially when you have Thor doing split kicks at the beginning of the movie. Here I am! Acting like a total doofus, and then screaming goats show up all throughout the entire film. Add to that, I felt like they set up so many things that were so close to being awesome. Jane, this is the best Jane has ever been. And then the idea of Gore, the God Butcher, there's so much potential there, both as a threatening, menacing villain, as well as using that character to explore certain philosophical ideas. But then the movie that they actually put out, the way it was edited, it just leaned into all the jokes rather than exploring some really cool stuff that I think was there. And so this movie just rang very hollow for me. Number 17, Jurassic World Dominion, and this is another one that it breaks my heart to have it this low on the list because Jurassic Park is one of my favorite movies of all time. And so when we learned we're doing real Jurassic World, dinosaurs all over the earth, and the original cast from Jurassic Park is returning, that to me just looked like they were like teeing off, like just so easy to make a movie that I'll have a lot of fun with. And then for some reason, they made a movie about locusts and corporate espionage.
Why?
It was just weird. Like the direction they decided to take everything, like they set up dinosaurs all over the earth, original cast right there. That's awesome. But instead, we're in like Evil Apple. You have Alan Grant going through these like slick hallways. He's an outdoorsy guy and he's in hallways doing espionage. It was a total misuse of the characters. There's fun to be had. I enjoyed some of the humor. I love seeing these characters again. There's fun to be had. But it should have been so much better. And it easily could have been so much better. Number 16, Minions: The Rise of Gru. Now, I really didn't like the first Minions film, and it seems like the missing piece in there was Gru. The Minions themselves are cute and fun side characters, but when they're front and center, they don't really have like character arcs. So when you put Gru back in the mix, especially him as a child, you get kind of this character arc journey of him becoming the supervillain from the original Despicable Me. Just kind of added that piece that was missing back in. Now, I've never been like a huge, massive fan of the Despicable Me movies, so it wasn't like blowing my mind or anything like that. But it was a pleasant surprise, especially given the fact that I really didn't care much for the previous Minions film. Next up, Bullet Train, an R-rated action movie that plays an awful lot like if Guy Ritchie from 22 years ago decided to direct an action movie in 2022. This is what it would be. There's a lot of stylistic similarities to Guy Ritchie's early films. Snatch had Brad Pitt as one of the lead characters in it, and the way the story's told, the hyperactivity, the nature of the humor, a lot of it feels like Guy Ritchie's work, and I would say that's a positive. A lot of that is what kind of added to the charm here and made this movie pop and stand out. The cast are all playing these lively, fun, charismatic characters. Now, it is at times way too convoluted, way too layered and everything happening. It tries too hard to be clever and witty. In fact, like there's one point in time in the movie where it pauses to give the backstory for a water bottle. I had a lot of fun with it. It wasn't as good as maybe it could have been. Number 14, Lightyear. And this is a frustrating one because so much about this movie is actually really good, and then it just fumbles a few things that kind of left me with a sour taste in my mouth. Like, at its core, it tells a fairly mature story about Lightyear that's like introspective. It can, while still being really funny, in particular because of Socks the cat.
Good night, Buzz.
Adds a bunch of levity at certain points in time. It plays like this super sci-fi epic, which is kind of a lot of fun to watch. And at the same time, it feels like it's violating its own central premise because it's supposed to be the movie that Andy watched back in 1995 that led to him wanting a Lightyear toy that led to the Toy Story movies. And this movie does not at all feel like this would be the movie that would lead to the Buzz Lightyear toy and that young Andy would want to watch and love and want to get a Buzz Lightyear toy. Likewise, the twist, the Zurg twist, violates the established mythology, and I just didn't buy into it. It just didn't work for me. And I understand how it ties into the arc that they're trying to do, but I didn't like it. It didn't work for me, and it held this movie back. There's so much that I liked. Overall, I still dug the movie, but it could have been so much better if they hadn't kind of made certain choices. Number 13, How to Train Your Sea Beast, or as it's actually called, The Sea Beast. Now, this is a Netflix original animated film that's really well done. That it has gorgeous animation, it has characters you get invested in, there's plenty of jokes that really land. Some of them had my entire living room, my whole family laughing out loud, and at the same time, it is a little bit derivative, quite a bit derivative in ways to How to Train Your Dragon. Both in the themes, the nature of the story, the types of like that there's pirate ships everywhere, people hunting these creatures out there. There's so many things that are very similar to How to Train Your Dragon. That doesn't mean that it's not good. It doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. But to me, I couldn't be like, man, this is a top tier animated film when it just reminded me so much of another great film. Then we have DC League of Super Pets, and when they first announced this movie, I was absolutely baffled as to what they were doing with this film. But as it put out like the second trailer, I started to like kind of get a little bit more the tone and the vibe of what they were trying to do with the film. So by the time I actually went to go see it, I was kind of a little bit excited. I wasn't expecting too much. And once again, I was pleasantly surprised. It has a nice reverence for some of the classic Superman, Batman tropes, and like the way that it does the intro sequence, like has a reverence for the Donner Superman films. It kind of worked for me. It tugged at a lot of the right heartstrings for me. Then it kind of turns into kind of the classic formula. The dog gets lost and is off with the other people without the owner, except combined with the superhero plotline, they just kind of took some familiar stuff, blended it all together, put a DC skin on it, and it put a grin on my face. I had fun with it. This is a movie my kids decide to rewatch a lot. I'd be okay with that. Number 11, The Gray Man, the latest film with the Russo brothers, and it stars Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling, Ana de Armas, and many more. And this is such a bizarre project because its basic concept is a fairly familiar, big action spy movie, except it was given a $200 million budget, given multiple A-list stars, and it was directed by the directors of Endgame. And so when you have that much money, that much star power, and directors with that kind of current clout, you expect it to be something really special. And this is like, yeah, it's like a fun, fast-paced action spy movie. If you like these types of movies, there's a lot of fun to be had. I just like movies like this. I just like fast-paced action movies where movie stars get to be movie stars. I just like this kind of thing, so I had a lot of fun with it. In particular, Chris Evans playing so far against type. Since he's so known these days as Captain America, and this character is very much not Captain America, I enjoyed that. Should it have cost $200 million? No, I have no idea where that money went, but I still had fun with it. Kicking off our top 10 is Terror on the Prairie, the Gina Carano Western vehicle, and it's a fairly straightforward Western. It's not a complex plot, but it's executed in a manner that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's a little bit slow in the first kind of 15, 20 minutes as it's establishing this family's dynamic and how desolate and barren where they are is at. But once things kind of kick into motion, it's like stressful and intense until the end. And it's not like a slick action movie with big choreography and cool moves. Like, it plays out like if you were really there, where people get nervous in the middle of a gunfight and they're using these old guns so they're missing. And it gets you invested in kind of the mystery of, like, why do these people care so much about this particular family? You know, it's not like breaking any new ground. It's not incredible, just a solid, straightforward, simple concept Western. Number 9, Nope. And for me, this was a nice return to form for Jordan Peele. I wasn't crazy about Us, and I had a lot more fun with this movie. It felt like it was a combination of a throwback blockbuster like Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Tremors, Signs, all blended together and told through Jordan Peele's eye, with his perspective on the world, his use of symbolism, metaphors. And so I enjoyed the journey that they were on with what's going on with the UFO situation. The characters were a lot of fun. Not all the metaphors worked, got a little bit way too layered. Some of them felt stretched. And so it wasn't like a home run like Get Out was, but delivered a solid experience that introduced some compelling, interesting ideas. Next up, Rescue Rangers, and this is a movie that when they first announced it, I thought it was a terrible idea. When I saw the first trailer, I thought, nope, that's not gonna work. And then the early reviews came out, and it was people like actually praising the film. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I finally sat down and watched it with my family, and it was so much better than it had any right to be. It was clever, it was witty, and they got away with doing some of these cameos and guest appearances that I can't believe that they were able to cut a deal with Sony to make some of this stuff happen.
Yes, Ugly Sonic, that's the spirit.
And they'll like me for who I am. Not like last time when the internet got one look at my human teeth and burned the place down.
Earlier, I mentioned that if my kids decided to rewatch DC League of Super Pets on repeat, I wouldn't mind it. My kids did decide to watch Rescue Rangers on loop all throughout June and July. So I've seen it multiple times. And then whenever we do car rides, my 3-year-old always wants to listen to the Post Malone version of the Rescue Rangers song. And I'm okay with that, because they made a good movie. It's funny and it works for all ages. And it made my kids interested in checking out the Rescue Rangers, checking out Darkwing Duck. So for me, that was a big, gigantic win. Number 7, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And this is a movie that really didn't work for a lot of people, but I dug it. And I get the complaints. I get that for a movie called Multiverse of Madness, there's not a lot of multiverse madness. They go somewhere where they put pizza in a bowl. Wild, crazy. Where you go on red and stop on green. Crazy. I get it. There's some wasted potential here. There should have been more madness. Some things didn't quite hold up. I gotcha. I just thoroughly enjoyed that we got a Sam Raimi MCU film, and not Spider-Man Sam Raimi, Evil Dead 2 Sam Raimi in the MCU. With zombie Doctor Strange, a fight between two Doctor Stranges where they're throwing notes at each other. You have Wanda just going nuts, killing people where they're like finding ways to work around the fact that they can't cover her in blood, so they cover her in oil that looks like blood. I mean, it goes dark, it goes creepy at times. Like, I totally get that this movie could have been better, should have been better. There's room for all of that. Doesn't change the fact that I love so much of what we did get with this film. Then we have Hustle. This is a Netflix original sports film starring Adam Sandler, and it sticks pretty close to the sports movie formula. That doesn't change the fact that it absolutely plays the formula right. But it does have enough of a spin on it where the lead character isn't on the team. He's not managing the team. He's like the guy trying to get into the managing game. He's a recruiter trying to prepare someone to get recruited. And so it has just a different enough angle on the sports movie genre that it's compelling and interesting. And they give us this lead character that's just broken enough, just flawed enough, but that you're always rooting for him. You always know the strengths that he does have. And so a movie, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just effectively delivering the type of experience that you want from a movie like this. In fifth place, Vengeance. This is a dark comedy, crime thriller, written and directed and starring BJ Novak, Ryan from The Office. And I just thought this was such a pleasant surprise. It's very Texas-based. If you don't know, I live in Texas. It's just jam-packed with Texas humor.
Who here is a diehard fan of the University of Texas? And who here is a fan of Texas Tech?
And so there was so much stuff in this movie that had my theater just bursting in laughter from beginning to end. But the movie just does this great job of exploring the way that we prejudge people and the way that we assume things about them and create narratives about them while being very funny. It has kind of a murder mystery aspect to it, like it's a true crime podcast as a movie. It also plays as this funny comedy about the New Yorker in small town Texas.
The two of us are going to avenge her death.
So as like a personal boundary, I don't avenge deaths.
But it also has really good kind of messaging in it. And there's a great part in it for Ashton Kutcher, who does some of these little monologues, and he just sucks you in. It's fascinating to see Ashton Kutcher doing that. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think in the last 5 minutes, they didn't know quite how to land the ship, and so it feels like a choice is made that doesn't fit with the rest of the film. But besides that, man, I was laughing. I was engaged. Actually, I can't wait to watch this movie with my wife. I think she'll have a lot of fun with it. In fourth place is Elvis, and this is a movie that I almost didn't see. The nearly 3-hour runtime kind of scared me off from going to go see it. And I actually loaded my kids up into a car, drove across town to go see the press screening of Minions, showed up at the theater and realized I'd gotten the days wrong and the press screening was actually the day before. So I drove my kids home and I went, all right, looks like I have a free night. I'm going to go see Elvis. And it actually turned out to be a great little experience. Baz Luhrmann is just such a flashy, stylized director that he brings someone as flashy and stylized as Elvis just perfectly to the big screen. Just like a great matching of a central character, a real person, and a director's specific skill set.
This ain't no nostalgia show. We're gonna do something different.
And so it just takes you on this journey that brings everything to life. It's so energetic. It can be so tragic. It can be so triumphant. It has kind of all of the big emotions. It's exhausting. It is a bit much. Like right out of the gate, you're like, whoa, I don't think I can keep this up for 3 hours because it's a bit much. And it gets sometimes lost in the weeds with the Tom Hanks character. I didn't mind the makeup or the voice or anything like that, but it just gets lost in the weeds because you're like, you want, like, Elvis is the one you really want to spend time with, and it's spending a lot of time with this other guy because of the lens in which the story is told. But man, it's quite the experience. In third place, Prey. I love the original Predator. It's one of my 20 favorite movies of all time. And I always get excited when they announce a new Predator film. Not all of them have been great, but I love the potential, and luckily, this one turned out to be really good. It delivers the thrills, the action, the excitement that you want from a Predator film, but it doesn't feel like a rehash of the original. It just has a new way to explore it, a new way to have a central character who's clever, who finds a way to outmaneuver the Predator, who, it's not that she does it on her own. Other people are attacking the Predator, damaging the Predator, teaming up with her all throughout the whole movie, but she's learning all along the way, getting better, much like what Dutch did in the original film. So for me, this delivered more of the experience that I want from a Predator film, but without just copying what worked before. All Our runner-up, Black Phone, and I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It's based off a short story from Stephen King's son, and the apple has not fallen far from the tree. He just knows how to capture characters that feel real and then tell a story that's compelling, that has these supernatural elements that all kind of comes together at the end. And that's what you get with this film. And I just have a soft spot for stories about people in a confined space trying to survive that are like quick, efficient little films. I thought this one delivered. Even the way that it handled the dad character, who's introduced as such a dark, evil character. And I wouldn't say they gave him redemption by the end, but you understand why he was such a dark character at the beginning. And he's not just this one-dimensional character. It just all worked for me. This is very much my type of horror film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But easily coming in first place is Top Gun Maverick. Now, this movie has been one of my top 2 most anticipated films for like 3 years. They put out the first trailer for it at Comic-Con 2019. And I loved that trailer, and every other trailer they put out absolutely nailed it. Felt like they were capturing the energy of the original film, except bringing it into the 21st century. This movie, I felt just absolutely knocked it out of the park. That it captured everything that I loved about the original film, except did it a little bit better. It had a more coherent story. It had a clearer objective. Maverick's journey is so emotional and heartfelt. All the nostalgia, all the fan service moments hit the right beats. The new characters are great, just as memorable, iconic, and it has just such a crowd pleaser of a third act. They got it right on every single level. I would be shocked if this doesn't turn out to be my #1 movie of the year. So, without question, it's #1 for the summer. Remember, if you're interested in fresh, delicious meals delivered right to your doorstep, head to go.factor75.com/SeanChandler130 and use promo code SeanChandler130 to get $130 off your order. If you want to see my full reviews for most of the movies on this list, check out that playlist right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much. Bye-bye.